What's up, man? Nice to be on the show.
Yeah, nice to have you on. All's pretty informal here, so no need to stand on occasion. I appreciate you coming on. Tell chat watching who you are and also what you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, so my name is Ian Nasser Amautarsing. I'm a political scientist from the Netherlands. I was born in Suriname, a beautiful country in South America. Might be a little bit unknown, but I like to represent them still. And yeah, I'm a big Ayn Rand fan. I'm an objectivist for like 15 years, but I started out as a Marxist actually when I was 15. And I was actually very pro-Palestinian up until like 17, 18. Then I read Ayn Rand, my life changed, and I became some sort of right-wing quasi-politician, opinion guy. I come on TV sometime, but I'm trying to promote libertarianism and objectivism in the Netherlands.
I gotta say, I'm very curious as to how libertarianism could possibly lead you to support Israel, considering the fact that in terms of like the representation of statehood, Israel is much more like uh, willing to impose force on the freedom of individuals than anything like represented by Palestine.
I get where you're coming from. I wouldn't say like I'm a fan of Israel. I would say if I would have to make a choice in the conflict, which side I would support, I would go with Israel because I think they respect individual rights more than Hamas, which is currently running Gaza.
Uh,
So, in a situation where there would be some sort of secular or like moderate government in Gaza and they would be able to represent themselves, I would be fine with them having a Palestinian country. I would fully support that.
but there
So, in
was
that
a
sense, yeah,
there
go
was
ahead.
a secular moderate government, and it was sort of like deliberately pushed out by Israel. Like Israel took the land, ethnically cleansed the area, have been restricting the rights of the Palestinian minority for nearly a century now, and Netanyahu and his predecessors have worked to push the Palestinians into a position where they're more and more likely to radicalize and sort of militantly oppose Israel, which I can't really blame them for, considering the fact that peace didn't really get them anywhere.
You mean you can't blame the Palestinians?
Yeah, I can't really blame the Palestinians for thinking that like militant terrorism is the only potential solution for them, considering the fact that like there were decades of like Palestinian Authority and efforts at peace talks, and it seemed like no matter what happened, just the Palestinian rights got eroded further and further.
But don't you agree with me that a lot of it is due to the Palestinian leadership? Like there were plenty of opportunities where they had like good offers on the table. And let's be honest, they lost many wars. You and I both know how wars work. If you fight a war, you lose land. That's how it always used to work up until now.
Well,
So if
n-
you lose like three wars in a row and you still get offered 92%, like that's a pretty good deal. Wouldn't you agree?
well, that's not what happened. The area was controlled by the British Mandate, and when they decided to engage in the Zionist project, they engaged in the Nakba, and they deposed hundreds of thousands of people. A process which began before there was even any direct conflict. Like this opened with ethnic cleansing, and since
So,
then,
so, so,
like Palestinians have sort of lost. But I don't really believe in might makes right. Like I don't think that because you've won a war of conquest, you get to just indefinitely genocide the lesser ethnic group.
well, a lot hangs on the word conquest there. So you're saying that when the Nakba started, it wasn't triggered by anything. It was just Israel just came in, threw those people out. There was no aggression initially
No,
from the Arab states surrounding. There was no disagreement about the peace deal. There were no Arab resentments about this Jewish state in their midst.
I don't
Is
like
that
the
what you're claiming?
I don't like the implication that Palestinians and everyone associated with them has to be perfect and peaceful at all times, or it's justified to do a genocide against them. Like Palestinians and the Arab states have done things that I find disagreeable. None of that changes the fact that Israel chooses to commit a genocide, chooses to deprive them of their rights, chooses to keep them in an apartheid state. Like the idea of even if we were to accept the idea that like the Palestinians have consistently been the ones to engage in aggression, which is simply not true. The opening of this whole thing, the Nakba, was predicated by scuffling in the area between like Jewish, British, and Arab groups, but the mass violence was absolutely put forward first, by the Israelis with the sort of like implied permission of the British Mandate. But even with all that taken, like acknowledged, right now Israel has the power, and they are using that power to commit genocide and to commit ethnic cleansing. Nothing justifies that, even if the Palestinians have in the past been antagonistic to the concept of their own removal.
Uh, I don't like the use of the word genocide because I don't really find the proof for it. Like if you look at the population numbers, they're always going up. I don't mean that like as a corny thing to say or something, but like how is it a genocide when they have all the power Israel has militarily, but the population keeps growing year by year, and you keep claiming it's a genocide? It's a little bit weird to me.
Well, the population doesn't necessarily have to decrease for the genocide. But even by the UN definition, it could be like to impose measures intended to prevent births within a group, or to forcibly transfer children, or to attempt to bring about the physical destruction of a group. The reason that the population's been exploding is because a lot of Palestinians are crammed into an open air prison where they have nothing to do but like they don't have much going on in there. But like they're forced into a tiny tract of land. They're treated as second-class citizens. Their rights are being withered away. They're denied things like power and water and food. And right now we're seeing it. Like right now, like 2/3 of the population of the Gaza Strip is without housing. It's unlikely they'll be allowed to return to northern Gaza, which means this at the very least fits the definition of an ethnic cleansing. But already 15,000 have died. I mean, it's very clearly like a war for eradication.
I don't find it clearly at all. Like if this was a war for eradication, Israel would have been, they wouldn't have sent out warnings, they wouldn't have told people to leave for the south or for the north. I'm not sure. So it doesn't really fit. Or is this like all a big facade? I'm sorry. I get if you're saying war crimes, maybe I can get along with that, but I just don't get the genocide claim. And I think it's like unnecessarily troubling to the discussion to call it a genocide.
Well, they give those warnings for our benefit, right? Like the only reason, in my opinion, the only reason Israel hasn't just slaughtered all of them is because the world is watching. Like there are limits to what Israel can get away with. The more it antagonizes its neighboring Arab states, the more it makes itself unpalatable to like American voters. The more Israel has to restrict itself. But in terms of like war for eradication, that's the only direction this is all going, right? Like they've been continuing to expand illegal settlements in the West Bank for like over 50 years now. And with regards to the Gaza Strip, there doesn't seem to be like any other direction this is going. Like what happens to the Palestinian people, right? In the West Bank, they're being pushed out illegally, like bit by bit. And in the Gaza Strip, it's like, what are they supposed to do? Like they don't control anything. They don't control their own resources, their food, their water, their power. There doesn't seem to be any effort to integrate them. Like if you keep people in a prison forever, like even right now, there are members of the Israeli government that are just openly saying, this is our chance to get them all out. Like they're saying it openly.
Yeah. So like I agree with you on this part. I think this situation brings out the worst on both sides, right? So obviously, all the extreme religious Israeli guys are going to seize this opportunity. I agree with you. This is their opportunity to get the land they always wanted, to make their Jewish religious dream come true, whatever the hell, right? I'm an atheist. I don't care for that shit.
But they're in the government. They're doing it, though.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. But as long as Hamas exists, that's not going to stop. Right? You agree with me? Like, as long as Hamas is ruling Gaza, those guys are not going to get voted out probably, or they're going to be popular. They're going to have influence.
So you're saying all Israel would have to do to genocide the Palestinians is make sure that Hamas is in charge?
I would say if you are an Israeli and you want to eradicate the Palestinians, yes.
Well, that
would be in your
But that's what happened. Netanyahu funded Hamas, gave them money in briefcases, and had other like governmental organizations within the Gaza Strip declared terrorist organizations and arrested. Like there's been a protracted effort from Israel.
Okay, but I'm also a big fan of agency, and now it sounds like there's only a one-way streak, right? Like Palestinians have free will. Palestinians can
How
make
much
choices.
Power do Palestinians have compared to the government of Israel? Like on one hand, you have like the residents of an open-air prison, and on the other hand, you have a modern military nation-state backed by the most powerful country on earth.
I would say this: Palestinians have one of the most popular causes in the world. If they would push if they would have a couple of moderate guys representing them, they could make a lot of bank on this Palestinian
They
cause.
do.
There's a yeah, they could have a great economy. They could have amazing
Wait, how?
economic opportunities.
Wait.
Well,
How would they
they
have a
have to
great?
get rid of Hamas.
Wait,
They have
wait,
to
wait,
get
wait,
rid
wait.
of
First of all,
Hamas.
the Palestinian Authority already exists and nobody pays attention to them. They haven't had an election since 2006. And Israel pushed Hamas to be in charge because they have power in the situation. Also, how would they have a great economy? They don't control their own anything. It's not a free country.
Well, obviously not at this moment. We agree on that. But you like geopolitically, don't you agree with me that having Hamas in power weakens their case?
Yeah, that's why
Just,
Israel put them
just
there.
yeah. Okay, but you and I both agree that Hamas needs to go in order for the Palestinians to have any chance.
Yeah, but Hamas and the situation that led to Hamas was imposed by Israel. Like, if you continuously ethnically cleanse a group of people and show them that diplomacy doesn't matter because it doesn't lead to any gains, they'll choose terrorism. And that's not Palestinian specific. America did that in the American Revolution. Like, initially there were missives written to the King of England as a way of trying to like mitigate the taxes or try to like grant greater freedoms to the colonists. It was only after the chance at diplomacy seemed as though it couldn't like even work that we turned to terrorism. And that was what the American Revolution was to begin with. It was terrorism. It was people attacking, like in a lot of cases, civilian targets, like, you know, royal appointed officials over here. To sort of like secure a political goal. Like, this is how it always happens, right? You give people hope for diplomacy, and if you can't give them that, like, they will take violence. But that's not like the Palestinians' fault. That's just what Israel's forced on them.
But it is the Palestinians' fault that they're ruled by Hamas, right?
Well, I don't think so. No.
It just happened to them. They all just chose Hamas on involuntarily. Come on, like
Well, no,
they have
the
agency
conditions,
too.
the conditions that they had a secular popular leadership. It didn't do anything. Hamas was directly funded by Netanyahu. Like, the idea to just throw your arms up in the air and go like, oh, guess they chose this, like, really kind of overwrites. If they just chose this, Israel wouldn't have had to put their thumb on the scale so aggressively.
I wouldn't go so far as to say.
Also,
I
quick
guess they
question.
chose this.
Wait, really
Yeah,
quickly,
sure.
as an anti-statist, why do you even care that they support Hamas? Hamas is an anti-state, like, terrorist organization that's trying to break the back of the of the statehood that is violating the, you know, their rights. Like, principally speaking, shouldn't you be in favor of terrorism if it means breaking a population free from tyrannical statehood?
Well, I'm not an ANCAP, so I'm a minarchist, right? So I don't consider government to be an evil concept. I just think government needs to be strictly limited. So in that sense, I am an anti-statist if you're talking about interfering with the economy, taxation, all that stuff, but not when it comes to like there are legitimate functions of government. I recognize a couple of them.
Well, then you're not
Defense.
like
So I'm
libertarian,
not an
right?
ANCAP. So I'm not an
Well,
ANCAP.
you're not a
Well,
libertarian. You're in favor of literally the most tyrannical element of statehood. You're like, I don't want there to be business taxes, but I am okay with police states and authoritarian regimes.
well, I don't know how you guys have it in the US, but in the Netherlands, there are not that many libertarians. So the few that are there are separated by minarchism and ANCAPs. So the objectivists are always the minarchists. Then you have some Friedmanites, you have some Hayekians. They are minarchist. And then you have the ANCAPs. They like Rothbard, they like Hoppe. And that's basically the split in the Netherlands. But it's a very small fringe group here, like
I mean,
a couple
I'm
of
also a
thousand.
libertarian, but like that stems
Well,
fundamentally
you
from
say well,
desire for
well
freedom.
you well you say you're libertarian. I think it's a interesting
Well, I believe in
case
freedom
you
for
make.
people, not freedom for corporations. But, you know, whatever the case may be, like, there is no freedom in the Gaza Strip. Like, they literally are in a fence. Like, they're fenced off. There are automatic turrets and security cameras and snipers pointed inward at all times. Like, we're talking about a group of people who are, like, America, to some element at least, is a police state. They literally live in a prison. Like, they can't leave. Like, they're just kept in a camp, you know? Like,
Yeah,
it
but, but
seems
but
like
they have
Hamas is sort of like the, you know, in that context, you'd think that's a pretty appropriate breakage of statehood.
No, but come on, man. Like Hamas is misusing a lot of funds. Hamas is destroying the water supply by building rockets with that shit.
What
Like
is
they're not
wait, Israel
helping those
cuts off the
people.
water supply. Wait. If you have an issue with the water supply in the Gaza Strip, that's on Israel, nobody else. They literally cut and restrict water access over there. So Hamas tears up a few pipes to fight back against the state that's bleeding them dry, and that makes them responsible for the
Why would
what's the problem with just admitting that like Israel is creating all of these negative situations?
Well, a lot of these measures that they're taking, I'm not going to vouch for all of them, obviously, but a lot of these measurements they're taking, like cutting off the border, obviously, I'm going to cut off the border. If I'm neighboring a country that is sending rockets my way,
It's not a
I'm
country.
not going to a piece of land for the argument's sake.
But
Why would I open my border to that country?
it's not
Like,
opening
there's
a
no
border.
benefit.
It's part of your country.
It's not part of their
It
country.
is. It is literally the Gaza Strip is controlled by Israel. They have control over the resources. They control whether or not stuff goes in or out. They control the water, the
Only,
electricity.
only on their side of the border, right? They don't control the Egyptian border.
No, well, I don't know. Israel like missile
Come
striked it multiple
on,
times and blocked stuff from getting through. So it seems like they
come
kind of
on.
control that too.
It's interesting how like no one has any agency except Israel. Like even
Yes.
Egypt now
No.
is
Wait.
like
No.
just a sitting duck,
No,
right?
Egypt still has agency. Israel strikes the Palestinian side of that crossing. But yeah, Israel is the modern nuclear state backed by the world's most powerful countries. And the Gaza Strip is a group of 2 million desperately poor people in a ghetto the size of Seattle. Like, yeah,
So
there's
you're
a pretty huge difference in power.
so you're saying Egypt cannot open up the border, make sure that a lot of food gets in, supply them with stuff. It's
You
impossible.
you can literally look up like stuff Israel has done to prevent the admission of stuff into the Gaza Strip. But also, I'm not arguing that Egypt is good. I don't like Egypt. I'm saying that in terms of like what is happening to the Gaza Strip, like the negative circumstances here are controlled by Israel. Like imagine if a country, like a nation state, arbitrarily arrested millions of people and put them in a big camp and basically like humiliated and tortured them like for years and years and decades. And over time things got worse in that camp and they formed like prison gangs. And eventually the biggest meanest prison gang with like the white skinheads or whatever was like, listen folks, okay, I know you don't all like me, but I'm the only one tough enough here to break us out of here. And then like you look at the situation, you're like, ah, well look, they've decided to side with these like skinheads or whatever to break out of prison. How is it the fault of the prisoners, when in reality the whole condition, like everything that led to this was
Yeah,
constructed.
but you're leaving out so much context. Like for instance, even if you go back to the Nakba incident, right, from 1948, I think it was. Yeah, like I am sure that there was aggression on the side of Arab states, and they convinced the Palestinians to like let us have a go at Israel, and it failed, and Israel clapped back. That is not saying the clapback was fully good. Obviously, I'm sure there were war crimes on both sides. I acknowledge all that. But
So wait, what do
in
you think
terms, yeah,
happened?
what I think happened, I think there were tensions. I think the Arabs were very displeased with how the land was divided up. And I might even agree with them on that for a great part. Uh, and the Arab states surrounding were not happy, like Syria. So they said to the Palestinians, like, let's have at them. And
Okay,
then it failed. And
so
Israel clapped back and took like Jerusalem and took
no.
pieces of land.
No, in 48, the Palestinians lived there. The British mandate in the area, like that was like Arab territory. There were Jewish groups there, but like for the most part, like the
And they
Palestinians lived
bought a
there.
lot. They bought a lot of land. Those Jewish groups.
Yeah, well, the United Nations voted on the partition plan, which divided the territory into Jewish and Arab sovereign states. The plan was rejected by Palestinian leaders, but their word didn't count for much. So, with like foreign rule and imposition dividing people up, it led to increasing conflict until eventually, with overwhelming military might and munitions backed by the British, the Zionists cleared out nearly 1 million Palestinians and took over most of the land that was controlled by Palestinians. This wasn't like a back and forth between two militaries. There were indigenous people in the land, and based on the imposition of foreign governments, because a bunch of European powers felt guilty about the whole World War II thing and really wanted to make sure they could establish a sovereign Jewish state. They did so there, and it ended up in like the literal ethnic cleansing of the area. Like just, it wasn't like a back and forth. Like the power differential was massive.
No, but I'm not saying the Palestinians had like their army and they were threatening Israel. I'm saying the surrounding Arab states, they had armies.
I'm only
So
talking
there was
about
a military threat.
Sure, but I'm talking about the mistreatment of the Palestinians, which isn't justified by the fact that other Arab states are mad in the area. Like, I think the Arab states kind of had a right to be mad. All of their borders were decided by European powers, and then the European powers are like, oh, here's another country. Here's a bunch of Jewish people. Here you go. Also, we're kicking out 1 million Palestinians to put them there. Like, yeah, that'll
Listen,
make people mad.
I think we can both agree that like carving up land after World War I and II, like a lot of people got fucked over. The Kurds got fucked over. In this case, you could say the Palestinians got the raw end of the deal. I'm not denying that, but if you look at the cards they were dealt in 1948, do you think that they could have chosen a better path than they had? Relying on their Arab nations to keep attacking Israel, fully going for terrorism.
Wait, but you're simplifying.
Rejecting all those offers they got after all that happened. Like even in
what
2000,
offers
they got an amazing deal.
What offer? What deal? Well, so wait, first of all, I reject the premise here. I reject the premise here because every group could have done better always. Like that doesn't mean anything. But in terms of like how things have gone since then, for the Palestinian people, it has just been the slow loss of their rights and the crushing of their land into a smaller and smaller portion. This isn't like subjective or whatever. The UN keeps denouncing this, but the US is on the Security Council and we care about Israel continuing to exist, so we back them. Like the idea that the treatment of the Palestinian people has been continuously horrendous and unjustifiable is a broadly held position. The Palestinians aren't doing anything to the Israelis. Like what is there like an Israeli state that's being crushed into nothing and 1 million Israelis being dispossessed the other way around? Like there's no comparison. There is very clearly one powerful group and one powerless group getting squeezed tighter and tighter over time. Now we're seeing it break.
Like I would see it from a different perspective. I would say they got a raw end of the deal in 48. They handled it in the worst possible way.
How?
They lost the first couple of wars.
Wait, the Palestinians didn't. What war are you referring to?
The leadership of the Palestinians.
What war are you referring to?
The 67, the 73, the 48, like there are a lot.
Wait. Those weren't Israeli Palestinian wars. The first one, but with 48 was the Israeli-Palestinian war, but in other ones there were other Arab nations.
Yeah, but if you allow them to attack, like they did it, you're saying like those other Arab nations just happened to attack. The Palestinians were like, okay, well, if you want to have a go at Israel, go ahead. We don't, like, honestly.
Why would they not do that? They were invaded. The Palestinians were like being crushed in their own. Why would they not back the Arabs?
Sure, back the Arabs. But if you then lose, you're not going to get the same land back. That's all I'm saying. I could even understand that they're going with the Arabs. I can get their perspective, obviously. But if you then lose again and again, at a certain point, you're going to have to recalibrate and say, hold up, we're not going to defeat these guys militarily. We have to search for another strategy.
But again, the Palestinians...
That's just pragmatically.
The Palestinians haven't been trying to defeat Israel militarily. From 48 up until the 80s, the primary mode of engagement from Palestinians was diplomacy. There were multiple efforts, time and time again, to try to negotiate like their territory, their settlements back, the rights that they had lost. The fact that other Arab nations had invaded Israel multiple times doesn't mean that Israel's justified in continuing a genocide against the Palestinians.
But those other Arab nations also held big chunks of land for decades. And they didn't give those chunks of land to the Palestinians.
So I'm not here to morally judge Syria or Lebanon or whatever. I'm just talking about Israel mistreating Palestinians. That's it. Nothing any other nation does justifies that.
Well, if those other nations are threatening Israel with invasion, and if they're funding groups in Palestine, it obviously does matter.
Well, Israel's also
It's
funding
relevant.
Hamas, to be fair. So no, it's not. We're not talking about Egypt or any of these countries. It's just about what Israel is choosing to do with the Palestinians. Israel could have chosen to make Palestinians full citizens of Israel in like a one-state solution kind of way, but they didn't want to. They wanted a Jewish ethno-state. So instead, they restricted the rights of Palestinians, illegally stole their territories in the West Bank, and crushed them in the Gaza Strip. And like nothing the Palestinians do or ever do will justify that. There's no point where a minority population does a thing bad enough that it becomes okay to ethnically cleanse them. That's literally like that's a war crime.
First off, like I don't think a one-state solution will ever work. Let's just be realistic.
Jews and Arabs lived here together until the formation of Israel.
I'm saying it won't work now. I'm not saying it couldn't have worked in the past. I'm saying how the tensions are now, it's not going to work. Putting all these people in one state, the Jews are going to be demographically drowned. It's not going to happen. There's not ever going to be a chance of that happening.
Because the Israelis
are two-state.
Because I agree, but that's because the Israelis want an ethno-state. They literally like had the potential for a single-state solution. They chose not to.
But the land was divided in 48. They just wanted to keep that separation intact. That's fine, right?
It shouldn't have been divided. What right does the UN have to decide that 1 million Palestinian people are on the wrong side of a line?
Okay, but we could say this about so many borders that have been drawn.
Yeah.
So so you're saying like things were unfair back then. Like, yeah, I get you.
Yes,
like,
it was bad.
Things were unfair back then.
And Israel continues to do bad things to this day. But yes, like that was bad and it continues to be bad. Israel like did a bad thing then, but they could have made it right. You know, they could have taken the land they had and gone, okay, well, we've built like a sort of, you know, Jewish oriented secular democracy in the Middle East. And now we're going to make it equal for everyone. You know, what a modern country should do. But instead, you know, Palestinians are second-class citizens in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. You know, they have their rights restricted. And for a lot of Palestinians who live in Israel as citizens of Israel, there are still specific scrutinies they're held to. It's not an equal country.
And Palestinians could have said at a certain point, hey, this military thing, it's not working out for us. We keep losing land.
Have a military.
No, but like supporting our neighbors in attacking Israel, if you want to call it that, is not really working for us.
If they're being kept in camps, why would they not support the enemies of the country imprisoning them? Like if you were in like Nazi Germany and you got put in a camp and the Soviets invaded and freed your camp, would you like fight the Soviets too? Of course they're going to side against their oppressors. You know,
they could have said to their Arab nations, you know what? If you really like us that much, why don't you guys support us in another way and not like paying us to have suicide attacks?
Like what?
Why don't you pay us and invest in our country? Create
Israel doesn't allow it.
Economy.
Israel. I don't know what you think is going on down there. Israel doesn't let them have their own economy. Like they're not a separate country.
But you. Well, I don't know. My TV just talked to me. Well, you just said Israel can't get away with everything, right? The whole world is watching. So you're telling me that if there was like some moderate government in Palestine, Palestinian Authority, that would invite the Arab nations that used to attack Israel and would ask them, invest in our economy, we want to make a nice democratic state over here. They know that would be very good for their profile. Do you think America would say, nah, Israel, we got to put it down?
There was. The Palestine Liberation Organization was a non-violent governmental org that tried to represent the Palestinian people and try to get a diplomatic solution to the many, many human rights abuses Palestinians suffered from. And it didn't go anywhere.
And that's all up to the Israelis.
Well, I don't know what you mean by that. The Palestinians had a non-violent government. Like it didn't lead anywhere. Israel's continued to crush them with time. Like what? So out of curiosity, let's say the Palestinians have, you know, they did. So this isn't hypothetical, but let's say they had a like a non-violent coalition that tried to like seek diplomatic resolution with Israel, and Israel just kept violating their human rights and didn't do anything, and nothing got better. What would you suggest the Palestinian people do?
In that case, I think because the world is watching that a country like America, countries like France would definitely intervene.
But that happened and they
It
didn't. Okay, but what if they didn't?
well, obviously everyone has a right to self-defense, right? So like I'm gonna agree with that. Yeah, okay. In that case, then I would grant your point. Yeah. If that happens, then I would say the Israelis are not within the realms of reason. I agree with you, Vash. If
Okay,
that would happen.
so then what should the
Yeah.
Palestinians do then, hypothetically, if Israel was not conducive to like democratic solution making?
Well, they could offer obviously they could fight back, but I would say we again have the war crime uh, definition here. I wouldn't support killing civilians,
So
but I would
you're
support.
okay
But if they,
theoretically with the formation of Hamas as long as they only target military structures and members.
yeah, if you have a hypothetical situation where they had a moderate government, they swore off the attacks, there were no like rewards for people who blow themselves up, all that stuff was not happening. Yeah, like I would give them a chance. I would say, in that case, Israel, you don't have a right. There is no Hamas, right? There's no threat. So in that case, Israel wouldn't have the right to bomb. I fully agree.
But what if Israel just kept bombing and controlling and taking their rights away anyway?
Well, then they would obviously be in the wrong, and I might switch. I might say, well, the morality now has come on the side of the Palestinians,
Well, but what should the
and I would switch
Palestinians
my
do?
position. Resist, obviously, that's what I would do.
Okay, so like I don't like Hamas mostly because they're militant and jihadist, but in terms of like the idea of militant resistance to the state of Israel, what we're
I don't
describing
disagree. Yeah, yeah. I don't disagree with military resistance.
because
That's
it
not my main point against the Palestinians. My point is that they're being used or letting themselves be used because they have agency by Arab nations, by Iran, and those countries are using the Palestine issue to stave off like internal conflicts. To like Erdogan keeps using Palestine whenever he needs a boost in the polls. So they're becoming like a play ball of all these Arab nations, and they're not getting a good deal out of this because they are the ones getting bombed, but they also are ruled by a dictatorship that they put in power 15 years ago. So they have like a lot of troubles, a lot of hurdles to cross.
what if back in 2006 when they had that election, Hamas was the only
Mhm.
party that presented like potentially a real solution because the other group, Fatah, the group that was opposed to Hamas, had been trying
Mhm.
diplomatically to engage with Israel for a long time and nothing had happened. In fact, things were getting worse. Year after year, things were getting worse. So if you're one of the like millions of Palestinian people and you have two options, one of them is the status quo where you continue to die and rot in a cage. You have no freedom and you'll never have any freedom. You don't have the kind of citizenship that you could use to leave the country. Egypt won't let you through their border. You can't travel into Israel unless you're one of the lucky few that gets a work visa. In all likelihood, you'll eventually die either to malnutrition or to a bomb or to a disease that you could have had easily treated if you lived in Israel where there are like hospitals that actually work and have enough beds. Or you go with Hamas, a party that says, hey, listen, you know what? Things really suck and diplomacy isn't working. Maybe jihad will. Maybe the only way to break the back of our oppressors is through violent Islamic militant action. Can you understand how, given that situation, given the fact that a lot of these Palestinians were born in the ghetto, raised in the ghetto, and died in the ghetto, that a lot of them might think the status quo is not working? Like, maybe I should join Hamas.
I can understand radicalization. I can understand uh, young kids in Palestine growing up that way, thinking this is the way to go. I can understand it. I'm saying, as a political scientist, it's not working for them. Pragmatically,
It's not working
it's not working for them.
but whether or not it's working for them isn't up to them because diplomacy wasn't either. Like it's to the Palestinian people, it's do you die young fighting for your people or do you die middle aged because of like malnutrition? Like to them, this situation, like, who the cares? Why should they care about their own lives? It's not like they have any in those cages. The people making this choice for them is Israel. Like, all Israel would have to do is give them something, anything. If you want Hamas to go away, by the way, all Israel would have to do is actually engage in diplomatic negotiations, pull back their illegal settlements in the West Bank, allow Palestinians to return to them, pull people from the Gaza Strip over to those settlements, or like open up land around it, or give like greater permissions or freedoms, or say, fuck it, electricity and water's on the house, no more like sanctioning or like cutting off any of those. If they did that, people wouldn't join Hamas anymore because they would realize that there's something to work for, something to believe in.
Didn't they try this in 2005? Didn't Sharon remove a lot of settlers? Didn't he go against like the most right-wing Jewish fraction in his own party to get that done? He went against all those guys.
I mean,
because he really believed in it. Like, I'm not saying
you mean in the
perfect,
West Bank?
definitely not. Yeah.
I mean, the settler, like the settler movement has continued. Sharon didn't Sharon like suffer consequences for that? Like he went against the right wing people.
Yeah, he went against them, but I'm saying like there have been moves to say, okay, more hands-off approach, you guys figure it out. And you cannot say that the Palestinian response has been great.
Well, yeah, because it didn't work. Like, that's the thing. In order for Palestinians, in order for people who have been ethnically cleansed and brutalized for nearly a century, you can't just give them one politician who promises something good and then dies, because he got a stroke after that.
But he did do something. He didn't just say it. Right?
Sure. But then it clearly didn't keep, right? Because right now the settlement movement, or the settler movement, is faster than ever. Right now, as we speak, there are settlers that have been armed by the IDF that are illegally moving to like Palestinian settlements in the West Bank and clearing them out, literally just gunning them down. There have been over 200 now Palestinian deaths in the West Bank since October 7th. And a lot of it is just settlers and the IDF just clearing people out. And there's a scuffle, some guy throws a rock, they get shot, If like the Israeli people are the ones, Israel is the one who has done this brutality, they need to show real good faith. And that means years of reparations. I don't mean like one politician does one good law. I mean like, they need to like dedicate themselves to repairing this, to mending this, like the Palestinian people deserve the prostration after everything that's been done to them. And then maybe we will have peace. But until then, why would they not choose Hamas?
Because the Hamas approach is not working for them.
So neither was diplomacy. At least this way they die fighting.
I would say the first problem for the Palestinians is to get rid of Hamas.
They didn't have Hamas for decades, and it still didn't work. Israel needs to be the one. Israel has shown that they will not do good on Palestinians whether or not Hamas is there. When Fatah was in power, they still didn't do good to the Palestinians. The only hope is for Israel to put the first foot forward. And again, Israel is the one with the power. What would Palestinians even do right now? 3/4 of the people in the West Bank have fled their homes. Like what? Like they're going to have like a democratic election while all of them are huddling in refugee tents trying like not to get bombed or whatever. Like Israel is the one with the power. They can turn the water on like that. They can stop the bombing like that. They can, turn the electricity on like that. The Palestinian people deserve it. Does Israel, the state of Israel, deserve to not be heckled by Hamas? Honestly, the state of Israel has done a million times worse to the Palestinian people than Hamas has ever done to Israel. In terms of like moral culpability, Israel's job first is to apologize and to act, I think.
Okay, let me sketch you a scenario, right? So let's say Hamas is almost eradicated. There's a new, more moderate government installed in Gaza.
I don't think you can eradicate Hamas, to be clear, but...
Okay, yeah, sure. It's going to be a tough one. I get it. In response, Netanyahu gets voted out in a couple of months. A more moderate Israeli prime minister comes in. There's some perspective there. But if they're going to gamble on Hamas again, this is not going to work for them.
It's
just from the Palestinian view, right? If you have a choice right now, knowing that Netanyahu can really lose the next election, what is more pragmatic to do right now? Support Hamas or say, let's go a more moderate route now because there might be a window of opportunity here.
You are talking about an area where 3/4 of the people are in refugee camps. They haven't had an election in almost 20 years. You're asking for them to suddenly engage in like this anti-sociological paradigm shift when they have no reason to believe anything will change. Meanwhile, Israel, which has all the power, should not put forward the first, the first apology. No, I disagree strongly. Right now, like you are looking at a situation where one person is on the ground being beaten to death, and you are asking them, not the person with the hammer, to act well and to be trustful that he might, stay his hammer if they're kind, or like you're running up to the guy who's being like beaten with a bat, and you're like, dude, if you apologize loud enough, maybe they'll stop beating you with a bat, even though they beat you with a bat when you were apologizing to begin with. No. It's Israel that has to do the work here. And I don't understand what the opposition is to this, Like, why not? Like, the settlements in the West Bank are illegal. They have to give them up, The treatment of the people in the Gaza Strip is illegal, They have to stop.
I agree with you on the settlements. I don't agree with you on, this is how I view it, right? If Israel pulls back now, it will seem like a reward for what Hamas has done. Do you agree with me? If they would loosen up right now, if they hadn't gone in like a couple of weeks ago,
you don't get to do literal war crimes, because not doing war crimes would be seen as being conciliatory to the terrorist group. They've already killed like 15,000 people. Like, that's not a justification. Like, oh, they have to keep killing civilians because otherwise they'll look weak. I don't care. Make them look weak. Let Hamas have the win. I don't care.
But they're going after Hamas. They're not just bombing people randomly.
They are.
Right?
They literally are. Like, they are literally just
evidence.
They've literally been striking like hospitals and refugee camps. The reason Israel hasn't been bragging about Hamas casualties is because there are basically none. Like Hamas isn't that stupid. There are tunnels. They fled to the south the moment they realized they would be invading from the north. Like, 15,000 dead. How many of them are Hamas insurgents? Israel can't even point to what? A few dozen? It's like nothing. It's just civilians. They opened the war by like missile striking a bunch of Palestinian journalist houses where they live, their homes, directly with precision munitions. Like their goal here was not to clear out Hamas. They've been wanting to kill the Palestinians for a long time. There are politicians in government literally saying, like, here's our chance to get rid of them, Netanyahu compared them to biblical enemies of Israel. Like, they're here to play for keeps. This is not like, they're not going to hold off.
No, I fully agree that the most hawkish guys are going to use this opportunity. Definitely.
But those people are in power. Like, those are the people in power.
Yes, but on the Israeli side, at least we have elections, so we have a chance to get rid of them. On the Palestinian side, there are no elections, so we don't have a chance to get rid of them.
There's no need to get rid of them with an election. Hamas will go away if the Palestinian people are given an opportunity to live their lives in peace. Nobody jumps into jihadist insurgency when their life is going well. And also, what election? Well, 3/4 of them have been ousted from their homes. Like, you're running up to a person who's being beaten to death with a bat. Like what they're.
Well, the point you made about radicalization is not true. Like, especially in Europe, there are a lot of guys who radicalized, who are like very highly educated, like very smart guys.
Yeah, but in terms
ISIS.
In terms of like the jihadist militarization thing, like we saw with ISIS, we see with the Taliban, we saw with the Mujahideen, we've seen with Hamas over and over and over again. It's oppression and foreign imposition that does this to them. ISIS, after our invasion of Iraq and the destabilization and power vacuum, the Taliban and the Mujahideen because of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and Hamas because of decades of Israel not playing ball with attempts at diplomacy from the Palestinians. Like, the reason Hamas exists is because people think diplomacy cannot give them anything, that diplomacy can't work. And right now it seems it can't. Like, it hasn't worked.
So you don't think the reason Hamas exists is because these people have a certain Islamic view of violence and they agree with Hamas that they want to kill the Jews?
What do you mean?
That's a factor?
What do you mean Islamic view of violence? The only people doing mass killings, right?
Jihad, right?
The only group here doing mass killings are the Jews. They're the ones doing the mass killings. The mass killings are happening, not hypothetically, but in reality, and they're being done by an advanced military state, and it's the Jews doing it. Like, that's the group doing it.
Hamas is doing all the killing it can do. You agree with me on that, right?
What does that even mean?
Well, literally what it says, like, everyone they can kill, they will kill. They showed that when they had a couple of hours in Israel,
No,
if they have the opportunity,
they
they're
didn't
going to kill the
attack.
most. Yeah,
They
they didn't
didn't
attack what?
they didn't attack against Israeli civilians. Israel has been doing attacks against Palestinian civilians many times over. I don't like if your argument is that Hamas is somehow more violent than Israel, then this is like mathematically unprovable.
Well, I would say Hamas has less opportunity to be violent
Almost like
because
they
they
have
have.
significantly less power.
I agree, they have less power. I agree, but it doesn't make them the moral side because they have less power.
I'm I'm
That
not
doesn't
saying
mean anything.
I'm not saying that Hamas is the moral side. I'm saying the Palestinians are broadly.
Yeah, but as long as Hamas is a representative of the Palestinian people,
They weren't
you
for
can
decades.
you can't separate those two. You
Yeah,
cannot
yeah,
just.
you can. Yeah, what you're describing is literally the pretext for a war crime, collective punishment.
All
You're
war is collective
describing.
punishment. All war is collective punishment.
No, it is not. Absolutely no.
Yes.
The indiscriminate slaughter of civilians because of the government. Then you just think all war is war crimes.
No, I'm saying all war is collective punishment.
No, it is not. War is supposed to be militaries fighting other militaries, and if civilians die, it's either accidental or because they were incidental, like casualties when attacking military targets.
But Israel is taking measures in limiting civilian casualties.
They are bombing indiscriminately, and them saying, "Hey, go to the south now. You have 24 hours to get down below this line we've drawn in the sand," and then missiles striking the caravan of people moving south.
That one was a Hamas attack. The one with the bus, you mean, that blew up?
The strike that killed like dozens of people that was on the direct line from them moving from the northern part to the southern part.
I know there was one where a bus blew up, which definitely wasn't Israel, but I'm not sure about all of them, so I'm not gonna.
An enormous number of civilians have died. Like nobody in their right mind could call that. Like, why would Israel directly missile strike over a dozen Palestinian journalist houses if they weren't just trying to like silence all of the people who could be reporting what they're doing?
Yeah, well, obviously, I wouldn't agree to that. So,
well, but okay. How can you believe, like, no, but it's not just you can't agree to it. That's insane. This is the most deadly conflict for journalists in over 30 years, since the end of the Cold War. Like, Israel is, and it's not the Hamas that's doing that. Israel is cutting off everything, cutting off power, cutting off internet, killing the journalists, killing UN workers, Red Crescent and Red Cross workers. Like, the idea that this is some kind of targeted, like, restrained strike against Hamas is insane. That's just not happening.
I would say that Israel is restraining itself.
I just don't think that lines up with like any sane assessment of the facts. Like I guess they could nuke the Gaza Strip. Like they're restraining themselves in the sense that they could do that. But in terms of like fighting this war responsibly and without collective punishment, the members of the Israeli government have literally invoked collective punishment. They have literally said, like, as long as Hamas, like, they are all Hamas. They all support Hamas, therefore they're all Hamas. They're invoking the war crime.
Yeah, but I do think that when you're fighting a dictatorship, it's different than when you're fighting a democracy.
There isn't a dictatorship there. It's just an open-air prison. It's not a country. They don't have a military.
But how? So you don't consider Hamas to be a dictatorship?
It's a prison that Israel created that has a prison gang that runs it. They had a government, and that government tried to fight for their rights, and it didn't work. Israel wouldn't listen.
But right now, Hamas is the governing institute in Gaza, right?
They are the only group with power there apart from Israel. Like, they're a prison gang, sure. Like, in the sense that a prison gang could take control of a prison, but who built the walls?
Okay, you know what? I get where you're coming from. I would just put way more agency with the Palestinians. I just think you're only viewing it from one side because they have more power.
I mean, generally speaking, the group with the more power is supposed to be the one to right the wrongs, especially when on one hand, the Palestinians have done basically nothing to Israel, and Israel has engaged in decades of genocide and ethnic cleansing.
Come on. There were like a lot of attacks.
If you want to do like
before they build the wall, there were a lot of suicide attacks.
There have always been more deaths.
A lot of intifadas, a lot of rockets.
I am coming on here. If you want to compare the number of deaths on both sides, it has always been more Palestinians dead. The number of Palestinians, if you include the numbers who have been displaced from their homes, never to return because they've never been given right to return, it goes into well over 1 million people. What does that compare to? Some rocks, some bottle rockets fired across? Israel's a modern military state. Maybe they could just not do the ethnic cleansing. Maybe Israel could use its enormous power to just do what every other modern Western state has done and not be an apartheid state. But they can't do it because they are obsessed with the idea of being a Jewish ethno-state. So they won't. The people there, both Israelis and many of them, because Israelis tend to be pretty far right in the issue, and their government are militantly opposed to the idea of handing over any power in government to Arabs.
I don't believe in counting dead bodies to determine who's in the right.
Well, that's convenient for Israel, considering the way things have stacked up.
No, because if it were the other way around in any other conflict, I still wouldn't use that measurement. Like if Ukraine now starts killing like a lot of Russian soldiers and they like end up killing way more.
Those are Russian soldiers, not civilians. If Ukraine started killing a bunch of Russian civilians, that actually would change things quite a bit.
It would? So you're saying that if Ukraine right now started bombing Russian cities like Russia is bombing Ukrainian cities, even if Ukraine is defending itself and bombing because they want Russia to leave their country, you would say that the moment they kill more, they're in the wrong.
Yes.
That's a ridiculous standard.
No, that's called war crimes. Yeah. Just because your country is being invaded and the Russians commit war crimes does not mean that you get to go, oh, well, guess we'll do yours, and then start strategically bombing like Moscow or whatever. Yeah, there are war crimes.
So you're saying that if you're invaded by a country, you don't have the right to bomb that country in order to get them to leave your country.
Yeah, you can, not indiscriminately. Russia is not bombing Ukrainian cities and only targeting military targets. Russia's just leveling Ukrainian cities. If Ukraine engaged, I agree. If Ukraine engaged in targeted bombing of military assets, that might lead to some civilian casualties, but I think that's acceptable within the rules of war. What Russia has done to Ukraine, and what Israel is doing right now to the Gaza Strip, is just indiscriminate civilian massacre.
Well, I believe that the Russians are doing it indiscriminately. I don't think the Israelis are, but
I just don't think that's. I mean, you can agree or disagree. Like the numbers, like every humanitarian rights group on the planet is like ringing alarm bells right now. The people whose job it is to study genocide are ringing the alarm bells.
The numbers count is just not a good argument. Like there are so many other arguments. Just don't use the numbers count. It's just stupid.
2 months and 15,000 dead is pretty extraordinary, especially considering we're talking about one area the size of a single American city. Like, you can look at satellite maps right now of Gaza, and it's literally nothing. There is no Gaza anymore. They're not going back, dog. What do you think is happening to the 2 million Palestinians that are now crammed in the southern part of the Gaza Strip? Do you think they're going back to the molten ash heap that is the northern part of the Gaza Strip? There aren't houses to go back to.
Do you think that if you would believe for 1 second that Israel wants to eliminate Hamas, you might not believe it, but just for the sake of the argument.
They like Hamas. They're pro-Hamas.
Okay, but for the sake of the argument, let's say Israel wants to eradicate Hamas. That's gonna take that's gonna cost a lot of lives. You agree with me, right? Like even if you do it in the best possible way.
Maybe you shouldn't do it then.
If you want to eradicate 40,000 people, some estimates are up to that from Hamas fighters, it's gonna cost a lot of people's lives. Like,
then don't do it.
That's terrible.
No, you don't get to just like, oh well. Sadly, our goal involves killing 1 million civilians. Guess we have to kill 1 million civilians. You just don't do it.
But the goal is self-defense, right?
No, it's not. No. Hamas is the one acting in self-defense. Israel did this to the Gaza Strip. Israel isn't acting in self-defense. They're the ones who created the situation. Israel didn't exist here. They partitioned the territory, Nakba'd the Palestinians, fought war after war.
They did not partition. The UN partitioned.
And they partitioned with the consultation of Zionist groups, and Zionist militias were given weapons and then a full-on army. Yes, they did not directly do it, but they were fully part of the process. process, consented to it, and were participant in the removal of the Palestinians during the Nakba. Time after time after time, it's Israelis who have been the aggressors. And now, after cramming a bunch of Palestinians into a concentration camp, they act indignant that a few bottle rockets find their way out. Well, I'm really sorry, Israel, but you did make all of this happen, and you could stop it. Israel could stop it and make life better for them and for the Palestinians. They're jeopardizing their own safety. The safety of Israeli people is jeopardized every time that dumb Netanyahu, who, by the way, the Israelis voted for, as long as we're doing the you're responsible for who you vote for bit, okay? Netanyahu has continuously jeopardized the safety of Israeli civilians by putting them at odds with every neighboring Arab state. Constant aggression and aggression and aggression. They're never going to live there peacefully if you keep throwing rocks at everyone you live by and the people you live next to, the Palestinians.
So you're just going to ignore the Abraham Accords? That's also Netanyahu making enemies with neighboring states? Him like having peace deals.
I mean, how's that working out? Like, a bunch of neighboring countries have literally threatened to militarily intervene if they don't stop killing Palestinians. Clearly, it didn't work that well.
Okay, so because the situation now changed, you're not going to recognize.
They changed
what
it.
happened.
Well, he attempted the Abrahamic Accords, but it doesn't really matter if you're going to keep genociding the Palestinians. All the neighboring Arab nations are going to rile up about it, right?
Yeah, because they find it a very useful front, right? The Palestinian front. They use it to distract their own people from internal problems.
Yeah, just like Netanyahu uses Hamas. Yeah.
They keep them in refugee camps. They don't give them rights. They don't give them permits to work in their countries, even though they're their Muslim brothers. And I don't hear you talking about Egypt.
Wait. You can't. They can't give them permits. They're in a camp.
Jordan can't give them work permits. The Palestinian refugees in Jordan. They're over a couple of million.
Yeah, the refugees. We're talking about the people in the Gaza Strip. Hey, why are there refugees in Jordan? That's weird. What are they refugees from?
From losing land after losing a war.
From being ethnically cleansed. That's what that means. Ethnic cleansing is when you clear people of an ethnicity out of a territory, often after they lose a war. It's possible to win a war and then to simply control the area. The part where you remove everyone of a given skin color or religion or whatever, that's the ethnic cleansing part. They chose to do that.
They chose to give back the Sinai. They offered up the Golan Heights.
First of all, okay, they did not offer up. They fought for the Golan Heights. They took it. People have asked them to give it back. Also, they were pressured into giving the Sinai.
They offered it up in return for peace.
In return for peace. They also were pressured into giving the Sinai back. Also, this is a pivot. This has nothing to do with the Palestinians. The Palestinians were not Egypt. They didn't fight. The Palestinians weren't at war with the Israeli army over the Sinai Peninsula. This is, again, like you keep pivoting when I say, like, Israel chose to do an ethnic cleansing. Why are there so many Palestinian refugees in Jordan? It's like, oh, well, because they chose to do it, at the end of the day, Israel just does monstrous shit all the time, and it gets so indignant when anything bad happens to it. When it causes, why does everyone hate me? I don't know, dude. Have you done anything hateable, Israel? Have you done anything to antagonize your neighbors? I wonder.
So what did you expect to happen in like?
Really quickly. I just have to say, I hate this. What do you expect to happen? Okay, if Israel did something, they did something. I'm not talking about like, oh, after this, what do you expect? If they did a thing, they did a thing. What did Israel expect? Did anything obligate Israel to make millions of Palestinian refugees? Was there like a divine mandate that made them do it? It was their choice. They chose to do that because the people who did it were evil. And that's all there is to it.
Okay. And the Palestinians chose Hamas.
In 2006.
And they chose intifadas.
My argument is that at that point, Israel had given them basically no other choice. And you haven't responded to that, by the way. Like, I keep arguing over and over again, like decades and decades of diplomatic efforts. It seems like you weren't even aware of them because you framed like all the wars as though they were like fought between Israel and Palestine. Yeah,
but you're acting like the Palestinians were like standing on the side, like, okay, guys, fight this war. Again, obviously not.
Yeah, why would they not support the people who are fighting the people, brutalizing them? No. Again. No.
I get you.
No, the Palestinians are. No, again, this isn't a matter of, well, what do you expect? The Palestinians are morally correct in supporting the enemy of their enemy. The Israelis are morally incorrect in doing genocide. You can't say, well, what did you expect? Why would Israel not do genocide after the people they were genociding sided with the people who were trying to stop the genocide? No shit. Of course they would side. The Palestinians have every right to. The Palestinians have every right to basically any support of any military opposition to Israel. They are being genocided. This is like libertarianism 101. I mean, they're literally being kept in an open air prison. Why would they not? Like, Israel cuts their water, man. They're in the Gaza Strip, even before the conflict, only like 10% of people.
Why would Israel owe them water?
They live in Israel. It's Israel territory. What do you mean owe them water?
They left the Gaza Strip in 2005.
What? It's still Israel. The military occupation left. It's still Israel. Israel controls the water in. This is what I mean. This is why I like talking to people like you, because you're monsters. You go through like the runabout, but then I hear, well, why would it be bad exactly for Ukraine to do war crimes back? It's like you don't comprehend what is or isn't acceptable reprisal on a social level. You say you're a libertarian, but you're okay with the police and the military, the least libertarian institutions in the world. And then when we get right down to it, who said 2 million people had to be given water? Who said water is a human right? I do say that. And if people like you are the kinds of people that Palestinians had to deal with when they tried to fight for their rights, no shit they turned to Hamas. Because they probably thought that, I don't know, suicide bombing buildings full of people like you is a far more effective route to their freedom than trying to explain to people like you why they deserve to have water as a human right. How dare you even pose that as a question? Like, because Israel left, like, the military occupation, they just die now? They just get to die?
They chose Hamas.
They chose Hamas. I'm
Hamas
choosing to end the call.
Of the water.
Nice. What a monster, dude. That guy pivoted off of everything, dog. Holy shit. He started grinning. He grinned nervously, yeah. Yeah, like I feel, man, it's so indicative of the kinds of people, you know? The whole, like, when he got indignant and he was like, are you saying you would really stop supporting Ukraine if they started shelling Russian cities the way Russia shelled their cities? Why? What? What? You can tell, like, again, people like that indicate so much more than they think because they're not smart enough to hide it. When he said, do you think there's anything about, like, the Muslim violence? Or remember that? He was like, do you think there's anything about the Muslim style of violence that might have attracted the Palestinian people? Like, because you know this guy just doesn't think Palestinians are, like, really people. Like, really, arguing with him is just, or arguing with anybody like him, is just a process of trying to get out those types of arguments. Because that's what I like to deal with. When he says stuff, so first of all, he didn't know anything about this conflict. And I'm pretty sure I mixed up, like, a date or two when I was talking to, so I'm not perfect. I don't want to pretend that I am. But when he started, like, talking about the conflict between Palestine and Israel, and he was like, yeah, like 48 and 56 and 64. And in my head, I'm like, I was just trying to think, like, wait, hold on. Do I have a bad memory? I do. Were those all wars with the Palestinian military? Let me just think about the Palestinian military in 1964. You know, the West Bank Armada. You know, nobody expected they'd be able to build an entire battleship in the little, like, kiddie pool outside Narim Yashef's you know, like, Adobe hut or whatever. But man, they did it. Oh man, who knew they could have built missiles with clotheslines, you know? So he didn't, like, care that much about the details of the conflict, and he didn't engage with any of the specifics. So the point of convos like that is you want to try to, like, tease out the bits where they reveal how monstrous they are, right? So the, like, Muslim violence thing was one, and a bunch of people in chat were saying, like, clipped when I said that Jews were the ones who killed 15,000 people in calm yourselves. Holy shit. He said that he implied that there was something innately violent about like Islam. So I pointed out the people who have done the most killing here are Jews. Like, anyone in chat who thinks that was, like, an actual clip thing or whatever, like, f yourself, okay? Jesus Christ. You throw me off my game, okay? So that's one. And then for two, there was the the war crime thing with Ukraine and Russia. But then for 3, the water thing, like he's out of things to say, and then he's like, why does Israel owe them water? Like, it's just immediately clear that this person is a demon, you know? Just like that. By the way, that guy's first message to me was not about Israel-Palestine. It was about defending the economic policies of the Argentinian guy. Wait, Argentina. Was Chile? No, it's Argentina. The guy, Milei, yeah. That guy. The first message to me was like, I think you're wrong on this guy's political shit or like economic shit or whatever. Like, obviously, of course, you know. Chile rhymes with Milei. That's true. That's kind of confusing, huh? He literally doesn't consider people to be important. Well, as a general rule, in my opinion, like, if you claim to be an ANCAP or anything adjacent to it, you're either a fascist or too stupid to realize you're one. Obviously, that guy fits the category. Like, I'm a libertarian. By the way, you know, I don't have an issue with Israel locking 2 million Palestinians up in the Gaza Strip, then cutting off their water. Why should they do... Like, it's like the implication there literally being that they could have pulled out back in, like, when did that happen? 2006 or whatever? Then cut the water, and then they all die. Because Israel controls the water to the Gaza Strip. They are next to water, the sea, the Mediterranean, which you can't drink. They all would have died. 2 million deaths in a week, 2 weeks, whatever. Like, that was that guy's idea. People are literally drinking water from the sea. Well, yeah, they're kind of out of water right now anyway. What was I saying? Really is actually insane how we kept insisting on the Palestinians' agency while harping on about how Israel's forced to do this. Yeah. Not to mention, like, the whole, like, he thinks all Palestinians are responsible for Hamas after everything Israel has done when the last election was in 2006. But he's like, oh, well, you know, there are some people in Israel's government, including Netanyahu, who are crazy, but, like, maybe they'll change him, as though that doesn't equally implicate the Israeli people now in the elections that happened recently. I, of course, don't think that elections necessarily implicate the people who have voted. I think that you can vote for various groups for a variety of reasons. In the case of the Palestinians, you know, it's pretty obvious that after decades and decades of abject suffering, a lot of them decided that it would be better to, you know, since diplomacy doesn't work, it'd be better to go with the whole, like, jihadist route. I genuinely don't think their logic there was innately unsound. It's Israel's fault for putting them in that position. Like, again, you know, Israel made it abundantly clear that that diplomacy is not on the table and they don't give a and I was prepared with counter arguments too, because I thought he was going to argue about the specific deals that have been offered. But anytime you hear that, like, the Palestinians rejected a good deal, okay, like, it's always bullshit, okay? Basically, what it is like, the deals almost always boil down to, hey, we'll stop continuing to do more bad things to you, but also you have to agree to never have right to return, and you forfeit all claims to the land you don't currently occupy. Basically, it's the same kind of good deals the American government offered, like, Indians, where it's like, hey, here's some money. By the way, by accepting this money, you acknowledge that the tiny, like, reservation territory that we've given you is actually the only land that you'll ever have, and you forfeit all claims to any other land, and you accept the legality of all of the, like, all that shit, you know? The important thing to note here is that in all these cases, Israel never really engages in diplomacy. They basically just throw their arms up and go, okay, here, and, like, pose something, and when the Palestinians reject it, because, again, these are not good deals, like, diplomacy then is off the table. Like, it just stops being a thing, because there's not, like, a good faith effort here. In all likelihood, by the way, I just want to say, given how monstrously they've been treated, Israel would probably respect their deals with the Palestinians just as much as America respected their deals with the Indians. That is to say, they would immediately break those deals. Like, what's going to happen? A UN condemnation? Like, so? That shit's been going on for decades. So what external force would compel Israel to abide by these agreements other than trusting Israel itself, the only institution with power in that region, you know? Why would we think they would be trustworthy when they keep doing illegal settlements against, like, international condemnation over and over and over again, and clearly don't give a and lie about everything, you know? There is blame on Arafat for the second intifada. Again, I want to be clear. I'm not arguing that Hamas is good for Palestinians, or that Palestinians made a good choice with Hamas, or that Palestinians have never done anything wrong. There was fighting early on, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of stuff. It's very complicated. We're talking about literally a century of one of the most complicated conflicts ever. But if you're treating that like a gotcha, that's some zero IQ shit. You know, you're literally looking at like 2 million civilians being bombed in a open air prison. You're like, did you know that 50 years ago there was a Palestinian who was actually a huge dick and did bad things to Israel? Like what? Like me stepping on like a mulched pile of Palestinian babies that have been vaporized by a JDAM, you know? Maybe these babies wouldn't be paste if this one guy, such and such, had done a better thing 60 years ago. Well, you know, this is like zero IQ shit, contrarian bullshit. Waste of time, losers, goddamn. The guy seems like he hasn't really considered the implications of his positions very much. Well, his real position, I think, is that he just doesn't give a fuck about human life, and he arbitrarily supports, like, the most powerful group in a region, or perhaps in line with... Maybe he has some, like, pro-Western hegemon thing going on. I don't really know. That would be likely if he supports Milei as well. He could just be a Western chauvinist who will support basically, like, anything to his end there, you know? I get the feeling he was still learning. Nah, no. That water comment, nope. Disqualified, invalidating. I always try to feel out stuff like that too, and I know sometimes people come to like bad arguments or say like inadvertently monstrous shit sometimes because, you know, debates are complicated and heated, and sometimes you just say shit, you know, I get it. But the whole who says they had a right to water thing, nope. Demon. No, this is not just a we're feeling out our arguments thing here. You just suck. You. Are all libertarians demons? Well, as the one real libertarian, obviously not. No, there's definitely like a correlative element there. Yeah, please do remember, by the way, that like, even if Israel calls everything off, like even if today they just stop doing the bombing, like, great, good job, what a bar you've cleared. The Palestinians can't go back, is the thing. Like, Gaza, the city of Gaza in the northern Gaza Strip is rubble. Like literally. Like it's not like, oh, we'll have to go back and rebuild. There's nothing to rebuild. You just have to build. Like first, good luck getting the bulldozers to clear all this rubble, you know? Good luck with that, by the way. You know, I'm sure Israel would love to let you use those. Lots and lots of bulldozers and construction equipment. And, like, get concrete. Yeah, good luck getting all this, pouring all the concrete, getting it. Like, what? Like, yeah, this isn't like, oh, man, our city is looking bad, but we can build it up together. Whatever. It's nothing. It's gone. It genuinely, like, I think it's important to remember this because, like where are they going to go, you know? What? And keep in mind, like, the buildings that are still standing aren't safe to be in, you know? Like, you can't, it's not like, oh, at least this one's fine. You don't know if that shit's going to be standing tomorrow. Good luck getting a construction, like, you know, survey outfit out there to, you know, check the foundations of everything. Yeah, just Jesse. Yeah, true, Will from PA. You see, if Israel just fires enough missiles, it'll actually grind down all the concrete into dust that can be reincorporated into future concrete mix. And they're actually helping, you see. God, and when he said all wars are collective punishment, me, dude, whatever. Is there any possibility that guy was being intentionally disingenuous for clout smithing? No, I don't think so. Hinkle has a very specific talent for sort of gleeful dishonesty. I don't think... There are lots of grifters, but like Hinkle's a very specific case. I think that guy was just bad. I love those moments when you snap and go off on these demons. Very cathartic when you call them out. Yeah, I was waiting for that one, man. Jesus.